It's that one. You can look at it if you like. We moved the IRS money from supplies. It was somehow in supplies. We moved it into
Good evening.
intergovernmental.
And welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting of December 4th, 2013. Robert Hunter is not available this evening, so Carol and I will do our best to go through all the items. Our first item on the agenda is to review the Selectmen's fiscal 2015 operating budgets. And we will review them. I don't know if we'll get to approve this evening. Perhaps we will on some of the smaller ones, but why don't we start on the operating budgets. And Carol, if you'd like to, excuse me, good. Okay, do you have any specific questions, or you want to go over one by one, Carol?
I'd like to go over one by one. If that's
Absolutely, go ahead. Okay.
Especially that we have the write-up now, so.
Good. Just bear with us with all this paper and paperwork. Okay, so the Selectmen's budget, which is Department 122. You said there's a change, Dave? Okay.
You've got a revised budget in your packet to reflect the change with the IRS audit fee. Audit compliance fee was incorrectly put in supplies. It belonged in the line intergovernmental funds, I think they called it.
Okay.
And so that change was made. It doesn't affect any of the totals. It's just
Now, obviously on this particular budget, the salary percentage increase is the thing that will jump out at most people. That's, Fred, are you going to speak to that?
Yes, yeah, I believe that's really the only change to the budget. The rest of it is level service, except for a decrease in advertising. What we are asking the board to consider is restoring the grade 8 administrative assistant position that existed in the past. Due to the increasing demands and the complexity of the operations in the Selectmen's office, we need someone at that level of qualifications, experience, and skills in order to perform the more complex tasks within the office. What we would do is supplant the 2 part-time grade 4 positions with that grade 8 position, if it is agreed to, and we also made a provision to keep 5 hours in for the grade 4 position to allow a floater in the office to pick up in any area where somebody has too much work and deadlines are approaching.
Okay, that's why the balance remains in that permanent part-time salary line.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Good, thank you.
Well, I certainly, watching what happened this summer when we had 2 61As to deal with on top of the normal workload, it was, there's just no spare room, and there's no flexibility. So anytime you get a special project that's something, or something becomes, even if it's a routine thing that becomes complex for whatever reason, it's just, it sucks up, and there's just no way to catch up with that stuff.
Yeah, we fell way behind this summer. We were stretched way too thin, and it was, not a good way to conduct business.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly that I'd like to see that position, and with all due respect to the people who've been sitting in that part-time permanent position, did a great job, but
They did.
you guys are stretched so thin. The complexity of the issues now are so great. And Carol used the 61A example, where 10 years ago, a file, a 61A transfer would have been about this thick, and now we have about 1.5 foot thick of paperwork.
It was.
And I know how much time it took, and we're now so much more demanding than perhaps prior selectmen.
You said that, Mr. Chair, not me.
Yes, there is a certain standard which, the
Yeah.
activities within the office and the quality of the results has
I do
risen.
like the idea of you being proactive in advancing the office going forward.
I think it's necessary.
Okay.
I would like, I think you'll find as we go through this, I'm really, we need to do some analysis, which hopefully we'll get done in the next 30 days or so, but, our budget increases and the tax rate changes over the last years are, to me, unsustainable. And we have got to step back and see what we can do, even though so much of it is fixed cost. But it's getting, it's really getting to be a hockey stick for increases in taxes. And maybe things will get a little better with the increased new growth and all the new development that we're beginning to see now in Dover after the last couple of years of slowdown. But I do think it's a huge issue. So as we go through this thing, it may seem like I'm nickel and diming a little bit, and I guess I am. But I really think that we need to try to really really tighten up where we can.
Okay.
The budgets. And,
Okay.
these are basically level funded, but for instance, on the advertising expenses, and I see that we've cut the item by 500. This is on page 2. But the fact of the matter is that in the last 2 years, we've spent 364 and 202.
Right.
So we're still, anywhere from, 6 to 10 times more than we've spent in the last 2 years. So I'd like to cut it down to 1,500 and see what happens and
Okay.
continue to,
We can do that.
and if fiscal year 14 ends up being in the $200 to $300 range, then fiscal year 16, it probably should be, $750 or, you know what I mean? Just,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the thing to remember is these are your budgets, obviously, and budgeting more conservatively gives you flexibility to deal with things that we can't foresee coming up. For example, the bay doors, there's going to be an ad for the legal for that. I don't know what a legal ad runs right now, but to the extent that the budget doesn't allow it, it just crimps your ability to be flexible to things as they come up. So as long as...
That's why I actually had wanted to see and I understand we'll get that before the next time.
Yes.
How much money was returned by department? To see
Okay.
what kind of...
Yeah, and we may or may not have that by next time, because it's part of the free cash analysis that the accountant does. When she can do that, you'll get it, just like you do every year.
I was asked at a recent warrant committee meeting, the timing of the certification of free cash, and I could not answer that.
It's been submitted to the Commonwealth. It's beyond our control now. We can't predict. It depends on where we were in the queue with all of our package.
Oh, okay. Carol, your point's well taken on the tax rate and the cost to each townsperson. And it's almost a double-edged sword, because, and when I say that, we know where most of the increases year to year go to. On the other side of that, how do we persuade, or how do we talk to the assessor setting the tax rate? And obviously they're looking at numbers differently than we are.
Well, to an extent, I mean, there is the issue of that new growth
Right.
number, okay, and that is totally within the domain of the Board of Assessors.
Right.
So we know that traditionally it's been very conservative. So yes, there is an issue. What we could do about it, sort of showing data and looking at, open building permits and what the values are. I mean, I don't know. And we know that most of the increase, well, vast majority of every year's increase at this point is going towards the schools.
Right.
I mean, everything else is basically, I think our budgets, other than salaries last year, our operating expenses for Selectmen decreased. So, as I said, it's not an easy thing, but I think we do have to step back and take a look at it. Certainly there are discussions going on at the schools, both at the region and at Chickering, about the impact at Chickering of lower enrollment. Right, that's, the lower enrollment at the elementary level, because you have these large graduating classes going up to the middle and the high school. So the middle and high school aren't going to see lower enrollments for a while. But we certainly have significantly lower enrollment at Chickering. At the same time, you have more sped expenses, so it all ends up balancing out and all ends up moving up. So,
Yeah. Some of the numbers that not been presented to us on a more detailed basis through the prior administration of the regional school system, you look at the cost of SPED, and it's astronomical when you think about it compared to the whole budget.
Oh,
Then
absolutely.
the question is, okay, is that comparable to like-type communities in the Commonwealth? And the answer is somewhat yes.
Somewhat, yes.
Somewhat yes, and
Yeah.
without being too detailed.
And the school committee is aware of that, and to their credit, they're doing a wonderful job of working with the new superintendent to really evaluate that and how on a long-term basis do you increase the in-house capabilities, which ultimately saves more money than doing outplacements. I mean, it's very complex issues, but they're certainly aware of it too.
You know, maybe in the springtime or after town meeting, we can maybe start developing some sort of ad hoc group or whatever the case may be, to study more in depth. Some of our neighboring towns have different groups looking at the finances, looking at cost cutting, looking at revenue enhancement. Perhaps we can revisit that once this budget season is behind us, because it will go a lot more than reducing.
I mean, this kind of stuff is just, this my little pet peeves, but it's got nothing to do with tax rate.
It'll be more theoretical, and
Yeah.
then applying those theory changes to the numbers.
Right, I mean, you take health insurance and you take OPEB, and fixed costs of other insurance, and salaries and sped, and that's it. I mean,
Right.
those are the areas.
Okay. So, did you want to reduce that number?
Yes, if you would me with that, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Okay.
What's the next one, 129?
129 is copying postage. Given that it looks relatively level, didn't have any straight increase. Okay, so you took into account the known increases across the board. I belong to the town accountant, or are you still somewhere?
Nope,
Carol?
nope.
I had a question, very generic question, by the way, on the town accountant expenses, binding of detailed general ledger for the last 12 years.
Yep.
What is that?
We historically have bound the general ledgers as a permanent record, and I'm not clear whether that's legally required or not, but it's a great best practice, and we just discontinued it after not the last incumbent, but the previous incumbent left here. And this accountant would like to clean that up and get current, and I support that request.
And then would we do it annually?
Typically, it's done every 3 years,
Okay.
so yeah, we would do this as a housekeeping matter going forward.
You know what I found very helpful is the little explanations under a lot of these line items that change, and I wish that would be used more. You know what I'm talking about, how they have the little explanations?
Yeah, like right here.
Yeah.
Finding of detailed general ledger.
Well, we have typically done that in the budget highlights memo.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Binding. Okay. I'm on to the town treasurer, and
Okay, sorry.
45?
45.
yeah, and I thought the particular increase in salaries was above what I came to understand as the personnel boards and the warrant committee and our acceptance. Is that all step increases, or?
That's all step increases, general increase, or the big one there is longevity. As people, that's up 15%.
Right.
As people age in service,
So
they
the
bump up 40.
466 includes the steps?
That would be 2.75% between steps, so for step increases,
Yeah.
plus 2% general
Okay, right
increase.
there, thank
Yeah.
you. Budget 208, 201. So really, the only increases really are the salaries then, okay. You know, it's unfortunate, this time of year, as we go through our comparison to actual numbers,
Right.
the actuals just really don't show anything at this time of year. It's unfortunate, because I'm a trend guy, I look at trends, and you can't in these particular
Right.
matters. Okay, now onto the legal budget. You want to increase that $10,000 because of the recent history of so much activity?
Annualizing the current expenses, it comes out to about
214?
214.
I can understand that approach, but, you know, would you like to say?
It's all yours, Mrs. Lisbon, go for it.
But with legal budget, you do have some, it's what I'll call foundation expenses that tend to be the same each year. And then you have spikes or dips depending on projects. And certainly this year, we had the spike of the Chapter 61A, right?
Yep.
If we took the Chapter 61A out, what target are we on?
We could probably level fund it anyway.
Right.
Well, 61A plus Carroll Park, all that, which fiscal year was that in? The cost associated with all the
It's
Attorney General's review?
13 and 14, but mostly in 13, but some in 14.
So in 13 only was the 130,000. So I would prefer to level fund it.
Given that they're deemed one-time expenses.
Well, given that we haven't approached,
Yeah.
in other words, again, we've only got 2 years here, you know, it might be sometimes nice to see a third year, to your point, because we don't have year-to-date numbers that mean anything. Okay, but, you know, we're already 50% more than what we spent last in fiscal year 13.
Okay.
So that we've-
I could tell you that in '07 and '08, we spent 180,000. I can't tell you what that was for, why there was an increase that year, but it's not predictable.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. One-time events aren't.
Well, unfortunately, we have a series over time of one-time events that are not predictable, and beyond reasonableness, you can't really control. You know, our philosophy, the board's philosophy, has always been an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, so we'd rather ask the question than do without. I'm not saying that's what would happen if we level funded, but that's the risk, and if we increase it to 200,000, we're not going to, at the end of the year, say, oh, good, let's call town council because we get $10,000 more in the budget. It will just go back to free cash, whereas if we go over 190, then we're stuck and we got to go to a reserve fund or somewhere else, or say no, and I don't ever recommend saying no.
No, certainly don't want to do that. And, you know, the procedures that you've set up where you're sort of the gatekeeper of that, you know, I think has been effective.
Okay.
But you go back a couple of years then, so have we ever gone above 190?
We've gone up to 400 and some odd $1,000. I still got the scars for that one. And that was in lower rates.
I'm not familiar with that number, but go ahead, keep it around.
I don't remember that one, I don't have that history.
Yeah, what I can do for the next meeting is give you some history that's beyond the 2 years here, so you can see. But again, you know, the legal expenses, as you know, are all centralized through the Selectmen's office, and any number of boards may need their services, and when they need them, and we provide them, so. We're trying to be conservative here, I certainly
Yeah, I
respect.
understand that. I'm trying to be a little less conservative, so.
So let me,
It's just, yeah.
let me develop a history that goes back a little ways, so you can see
Great.
where we've been, and you can
The other thing
decide accordingly.
is, I do like to look big picture sometimes, and we can keep that on the side, that extra 10 on the side perhaps. If we want to reduce because of something else,
Right.
that can be an X factor.
What we've sometimes done is, when we start filling in that list,
Yes.
No, it's
and
just
see
that.
what the totals look like.
Yeah. good.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we keep that aside for now? Thank you. Okay. data processing, other than salary, it's all very flat also. And the budget really jumped from actuals in 12 and 13 to 14. Let me, the professional services is the big difference. And that was,
So what,
then there's no use of professional services in the IT budget.
Well, as you recall, I think it's $16,000, Greer, is in there for our consulting backup.
That's correct.
So that's a contingency in the event that Bill is unexpectedly not with us or on vacation and we need services. I mean, we have evolved in the last 10 years to the point where we might as well not open the building if our IT stuff isn't working. So that's always there so that we, goodness forbid, somehow Bill couldn't be here someday and we had a problem with our network or any of our equipment, we could call the consulting service at a considerably higher rate of pay, but get them in here and solve the problem. So we've carried that every year, and we've happily not needed much of it, but we really need to keep that there if we want to assure that we're able to function under all
So the
circumstances.
service contract, if in fact there's one in place on the different softwares and hardware, doesn't provide for that hourly person to come in?
That provides support for those software services specific to like treasurer, collector, accountant.
Yeah.
But if our network were to go down,
The everyday IT needs
Right.
and website needs.
which include, it's our server, so all of these proprietary softwares are on our server. If our server went down and Bill wasn't around, or if he needed the more sophisticated
Expertise.
assistance,
Right.
that would be what we would rely on.
there's no IT depth in the town of
Absolutely.
Dover.
We got one man,
One.
person.
That's
Yeah,
it.
there is,
And he's great, but
And
he's
he's
one person.
fantastic,
Yeah.
but he's one.
Yes.
So, am I reading the narrative correctly that this is 45 hours?
The 45 hours salary differential would be for open hearing, town meeting,
that-
going
that's
around,
all
yeah,
right.
in
That's
addition to
in the
his
salaries.
usual
So how
salary.
is this, the backup for Bill, I'll call it, the purchase services, professional service, how is that calculated?
I believe originally we assumed 2 weeks of time, and we've just carried the same number forward every year.
I believe the year that the last IT person left, we spent $15,000 for a short time until we
Yeah.
hired
Yes.
Yeah.
Bill for that position. And also, professional services includes the cloud backup
Right.
of all the data and our GIS contract, which saves us having to hire someone on a part-time basis to maintain a GIS database.
Yeah, so that,
And those are new things in fiscal year 14, right? Which is why you don't
Yes.
see anything in
Yes.
12 or 13.
That's right.
So-
Yeah, that's brand
yes,
new.
our IT operation continues to evolve at a rapid rate.
Now, that's interesting. I'll go back to Carol's point on, okay, something's got to give. Something like this, is it best suited to be an Article 4, or is it a reserve fund issue in the future?
Well, right now, Mr. Chairman, if tomorrow Bill weren't here, I have the authorization by virtue of the budget to call the people and say, get down here, we need you right away.
Right.
If we didn't have this, I have nothing but call you and say, Mr. Chairman, at our next meeting, a week from Tuesday, we need to get a reserve fund transfer for the warrant committee 3 weeks away, and we fly blind with no network for 4 weeks.
See, with the,
I would
with
not
the legal
recommend
stuff, you can track it, and you know what your running rate is, you know what projects are on the board and so
You
forth.
have
And
lead
it looks-
time.
If it looks like, gee, we're up to 170 and we only have a budget of 190, you could go in and say, we've got 5 months to go or 4 months to go. We may not need it, but let's do a reserve fund just in case. Whereas this is basically emergency funds.
We know from our experience.
Yeah, I
that
know, yeah.
There's no tolerance for waiting when IT's not working, none. Even if, for that matter, website. We have a backup person for website for the routine stuff, but for IT, I certainly would not recommend, you're a centralized IT operation, the library, the highway, this building all rely on you. Increasingly, the public safety building relies. I could not in good conscience recommend that this money not be available to be used on a moment's notice.
No, that's a perfectly acceptable explanation on you need them the next day and not... through
Maybe
the
same
process
day.
of
It's
reserve
happened that
transfer.
way, same day.
And that was on a part-time basis, that we had the interim coverage when our last IT person left for just the short period of time, and it was $15,084.
When you say short period of time, can you define that?
I can tell you that we went out to hire quickly, as we always do, and in the first pool of candidates, we did not find one that satisfied our needs. And I said to Dave, we need to go back out and re-advertise to get the right person in here, because it's an important function, and that's how we got Bill. I would not have hired anyone from the first round of interviews.
Okay. So you're comfortable with that 22,577?
Yes.
You're comfortable with that? In the case of emergency, you'd have enough funds to bridge a problem?
To Mrs. Lisbon's point, we'd have at least enough funds to get them in here and then make the call to the chairman saying, we're not going to have enough money, but we got enough to keep us going for now. Can you arrange a meeting?
Okay. That's an excellent explanation of that need. Carol, is anything jumping out at you?
Well, just again with the Council on Aging budget, I mean, I was,
Where are we?
can't remember, I'm sorry.
COA.
I'm sorry, Concom, 171?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm on
Yeah,
the same
so,
one.
I can't remember whether I was a selectman at the time or warrant committee at the time when we offered to put in the trail maintenance expense line of 5,000. And it's been underutilized or not utilized at all in some years. And I know a couple years ago, there was just an accounting error. The expenses were taken off a different line item. But I think that had been corrected. So I'd like to understand from the COA what they see for their trail needs.
Conservation.
I saw Conservation Commission.
And if I may, I
Yes.
believe a volunteers created these, the signs, the trail signs.
Yeah, Jerry Arnold did all that
That's-
for Wildwoods as part of the Open Space Initiative, Committee Initiative.
And I have no idea what the cost of those are, whether he's gonna volunteer or donate those costs, but I know they have been created.
Yeah.
In fact, as I was in an open space committee meeting last night, and a subsequent email today, I saw a sample of those.
Yep.
At no cost to the town, so perhaps this is not necessary.
And that's just I mean, that's just one little piece of all the property they own, but I would expect that, I mean, obviously, there's emergency stuff, but there doesn't even seem to be any kind of ongoing expenditure, base maintenance, so I would like to understand that a little bit better.
Okay, they did, I did speak with their administrative assistant, and she said that they do have plans for this year and next to be more active in trail maintenance, but we didn't really get into the specifics, so I
Right,
can
and
get you
I've
more
heard that before, so I'd
information.
like- maybe they do now, but
Okay.
if they do, I'm sure their land is their land, and if they've got a plan, it's got to be written
Yep.
down somewhere in somebody's head, so.
Okay, we can get that for you.
Other than that, Concom is very, very flat.
176.
Board of Appeals. It's actually reduction.
Increase.
Oh, I see, the original budget versus the adjusted, okay.
So this was the question of giving them administrative support a couple of years ago, right? And I have notes going back that that in fiscal year 12, we were going to assess the need for additional support hours.
Uh-huh.
And so we spent all of $100 in fiscal year 13 in support. Are we doing anything, what's going on with fiscal year 14?
So last year, we had reduced the number of hours from 143 to 100, based on Karen Hayet's advice of time that she was spending on it. I will say that I picked up more of the selectmen's work. We probably should have had her stay and work the hours out of the Board of Appeals budget, and we didn't realize it was going to continue. We just thought it was, with these new developments, there was more activity, certainly.
Sure.
And there are deadlines, so I just said, and they would come up very quickly. You know, you had to do things within quick timeframes for hearings and so forth. I'd say, why don't you just, you know, do that? What are you doing today? Give it to me. And she was not as available to cover the hours. We're hopeful that we can get someone who can actually cover the hours so that we
The
can take
need
that
is there,
stressor.
we just haven't been able to
Yeah,
fill
we
it.
really need to take that
that
stressor
way.
off our office.
So how many hours is the FY 15?
100 hours
It's
for
still
the year.
100 hours,
That's
just at a
correct.
higher rate?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or I would give Felicia some of Karen's work, but it was really taxing
Okay.
on us.
Okay, thank you. $191 Whiting Road. Any questions on the lack of utilities used over there? And I know it's only, what are we, 5 months? But it's almost no utility use at all. I don't know if there was an explanation for that or not.
Well, fuel oil would be simply dependent upon deliveries.
Okay. And the electricity, same thing? Well, the electricity is something else, actually.
We just relied on the warrant committee guidelines for those numbers.
What were the warrant committee guidelines for utilities this year?
Heating oil was 2% above FY14 budgeted. Electricity was 3.3% above FY14 budgeted, and diesel and gasoline were the same as FY14 budgeted.
Okay, so you actually use the volume times X plus 2% type thing?
No, we used the actual budget and adjusted that as the warrant committee had asked. They
Oh, okay,
wanted
so
to
you
increase
use
over
last year's
budget.
budget and then creates it by the 2% there. And that's the guidelines, huh?
Yes.
They'll go on. Wish there was volume, there was a volume analysis, but especially in electricity, where I can understand gas or fuel, because it's a matter of delivery, and there's timing issues.
Yes, yeah, energy costs for FY15 should be budgeted using the following price changes relative to FY14 budgeted, right? Allowing for contracts that extend into FY15 if they're in existing contracts.
It's certainly not zero-based budgeting.
The virtue of simplicity, though, Mr. Chairman.
You want the townhouse, Carol?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
It's just the utility increases.
Carroll Community Center, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
The purchase of services, the telephone expense, is this in regard to what Park and Rec was trying to do over there, or is this in regard to the council on aging and getting all the telephones and the...
Regards to the Council on Aging.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, yeah.
Now, would we see that same reduction in this building because of their non-use in this building?
Offset somewhat by the fact that we somebody, I don't know if it was us, discovered a billing error. We've been being underbilled in this building.
You never talk about that.
Well, we didn't discover that. Somebody else discovered that, so. And I might point out that fuel oil, we're reducing that line because clearly, if you look at the 2013 expense versus 2014 budget, significant overage there, the result of a previous year warrant committee guideline, so it didn't make sense to increase that number, so we decreased it to 80 based on a volume analysis, Mr. Chairman.
That was based on volume, thank you.
I mean, it's very tricky, it's very difficult to come up with a guideline that works, but to the warrant committee's credit that they have one. And you remember years ago, everyone was using different assumptions, so we spent a lot of time just arguing about the assumptions. This way, it's just plug it in, and we'll adjust next year if we have to, so, makes sense.
But you'd love to see some conformity to a volume versus X plus 1.02%. Okay.
Well, what it doesn't do, other than just the normal efforts, which I think everybody needs to be reminded of every so often, is doesn't push the subject of conservation when you budget this way.
Absolutely.
Right, and that's the issue.
Town report. The Selectmen's report to the Town Report Committee, when is that due? December 15th, is that it? Okay.
It's on my list, Mr. Chairman.
Is it December 15th? Was
I'm
it
thinking it's in...
later than that?
Early January
January,
to the committee,
yes.
but you folks obviously have to see it and
Yes.
review it first, so
Yeah.
it's coming up.
We had a lot of moving parts last year, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I am the one. Not a lot of variance from the last fiscal year to this fiscal year for the building maintenance.
The expenses are actually level,
Right.
down a little bit. What was the, see if I have my notes here. The rationale last year for increasing the overtime line? Did that have to do with Carroll School?
Overtime is typically adjusted simply for the rates of pay adjustments for the guys who are doing them.
Oh, I see.
We budget a flat hour, number of hours times whatever the rate is, and the rate is adjusted in, every year.
So we still have 2 FTEs for
Yes.
custodial?
Yep.
When you budget overtime hours, do you do the number of hours consistent across all the departments that you're responsible for? Or do you look at historical?
We look at it department by department.
Okay. Thank you, Chief McGowan, for your write-up, the narrative on your fiscal 15 budget request. In lieu of the fact that we'll dedicate some time to Chief's new contract, are those numbers reflected in here?
Yes, they are, Mr. Chairman.
And I believe the chief is going to, put a special warrant article, I imagine, for the renovation of the police portion of the Protective Service Building?
We've included that in the capital budget
Okay.
for building maintenance. And we're waiting for the updated numbers for that project, which hopefully we'll have by the end of next week.
But we'll have to vote to make it a special
Special
warrant.
warrant, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Your decision.
I just assumed it would be.
Yeah, me
Sorry.
too. Yeah, me too.
Well, I look forward to probably the scope of marketing efforts, for lack of a better term, letting all the townspeople know what should be done there and how the chief and I guess us want to proceed in informing everyone and showing everyone the deficiencies in that particular part of the building. And I think we should probably do that sooner than later, creating some sort of scope of, for a calendar.
Oh, absolutely. I think we need to set up a series, I think, of open houses.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
informational sessions, and we could even put a video on the website of what it looks like now, because so many folks really never get into the police station, which is a good thing.
Now, with that being said, has that been contemplated already? I
We've-
don't want to jump into a capital issue, obviously, or another.
We have talked about the need to increase the profiles.
Okay. So maybe the very beginning of January, we should get really serious about that? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. That being said, I obviously digressed. Do you have questions about the police? No. Let me just see. I had more highlighted questions, no. Okay.
241.
241, which is the building inspector. Okay. Obviously, those numbers jumped dramatically, and do we have a very clear explanation for that?
We hope we do, Mr. Chairman. Greer?
In the building department, when the former administrative assistant and building inspector both retired, we tried an experiment to see if we needed that much staffing and in that configuration. What we did in the beginning with the new building inspector was we increased the hours for that position from 19 per week to 24 to allow for the building inspector to absorb the administrative work. When the economy was slower, he was not entirely able to manage that, so then we went and we looked internally at existing staff, and that using an existing staff member only worked partially, and at points there was too much work to be done. The administrative work in that office was falling behind. We farmed some of it out to the accountant, the treasurer, but what we ultimately decided is that, in fact, we do need an administrative assistant dedicated to the building department. The former assistant was there 24 hours. We would like to put someone in that office for 20 hours per week. The increase is that we had initially dropped the hours for that position during the experiment from 20 to 10, but then, as I said, the person who was picking up the slack there was not able to keep up with the work, so we've determined that we need 20 hours per week, if the board will grant it.
And that the history of the experience you just spoke of, that's over the last, how long?
Couple of years, was it?
Since the retirement of the previous incumbent.
It was
2 years or so, right?
August, I
2 years.
believe, 2 years ago, August. We really tried our hardest to just do it with existing staff, a few extra hours for the building inspector, but they had 3 people in that department, and right now they just have the one, so.
Okay. And the assistant, what grade would that be?
Grade 5.
It's a grade 5 position, yes.
Okay. Okay. I guess for the purpose of the warrant committee, the whole level service issue will have to be explained. And I understand where you're coming from, but,
Certainly prepared to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
good, thank you. Any other questions, Carol?
We're up to 291.
Civil defense. My binder has civil defense on it.
The drones are coming.
No, the old movie, The Russians are
The
coming.
Russians are coming. Alan Arkin.
Okay.
I think there may be an error.
There is an
I
error.
was gonna say, I
Yep.
like this.
The math is done, it just didn't get transferred from the spreadsheet into the actual KDS budget, my apologies.
Okay, so that's.
We'll get that ready for you for your next meeting.
Okay.
But it's just adjusted for the cost of living.
That's it. Yeah,
Okay.
no changes.
The animal control, which is Department 292, I see the salary increases due to longevity, so forth. Vehicle maintenance is going down because there's a new vehicle. That's good. And that's really the extent of the changes. Care of trees. Care of trees.
We had doubled up on the professional services for a couple of years because we got way behind due to storm damage, but made the commitment that we would scale it back once we caught up, and here we are.
Okay, good.
So do we have a new, has John put together a new tree plan that takes into account the activity after, was it Irene and all?
I don't know the answer to that question. I will find out.
I've never seen a tree plant. I've seen the
Would you like to
paving.
see the one from 2009?
Is that the last one?
That's the last one I have,
Yeah, okay.
5-year plan. It's sort of, it's great, I mean, it's sort of the same way that Craig does the street plan, the
Right.
pavement plan.
Used to that.
It's very helpful.
Right, it's very helpful, but given all the significant work that was done with, you know, over the last 2 years with Irene and everything else, my guess would be that it's almost.
It's changed, yeah.
Okay, so are you going to request that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. It's a 5-year plan.
Uh-huh.
Good. Carol, I'm shocked you have that in your binder.
I know, I'm just so surprised. I may even have 2004 somewhere.
I'll bet on it.
The bonfire will be amazing.
Okay, tree committee, which is, they didn't spend anything in 2013.
I asked John Devine about that, and he said that they thought they might, but they didn't find a real need to spend it, so they decided it would be best to turn it back to the town. But they do have plans for the coming fiscal year for trees at the transfer station to replace some of them.
Oh, really? Those are little baby trees.
I don't know anything about that. You'd have to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You haven't been to the dump yet. How long you been here and you haven't been to the dump?
not, yeah.
Transfer station.
Excuse me,
Really?
Mr.
Most
Chairman.
interesting
You know, field
place in
trip,
town.
field trip.
Field trip, absolutely.
Absolutely, field trip.
If I had to do Whiting Road, you should do the transfer station. Okay, so John Devine.
He
wants
has
to
plans,
use-
yes. And usually he does. It's just last year he said he didn't want to spend it. It turned out they didn't really need it, so.
Okay. Detective Agency Building.
Just the utilities and.
You know, it's driven by the warrant committee's guideline.
Yeah.
Don't use volume, use previous budget number and increase it.
Well, you can see where the impact of, so you know how you adjusted the Carroll Community Center because the volume just wasn't there? If you look at Protective Agency Building, you can almost make the same case, not to the same degree.
But you can certainly make the
You
case.
can certainly make a case for not increasing it by 2%. The fuel.
You see the
Yep, I
historical
do.
12 and 13s
And look at
substantially low.
look at the electricity, it's even worse.
Yeah. We do a little analysis on that,
Certainly.
volume-wise. Because you could pick up maybe $10,000 or $15,000 right in those two line items right there.
Okay.
And really, that's the bulk of that,
Yep. An increase there.
of course, I have a grand total that's
Yeah, right.
on the bottom of that, which I think is off.
You know, what? Speaking as the former town accountant who inherited the conversion to the KVS, the report writing for this application is difficult to use. I don't want to bore you with details, but you get a lot of data on the report that's not complete because you're pulling out a section, but the grand total show up for sections that are not in front of you. It's not the best report writer.
Engineering? Now, we want to talk about, obviously the salary's increased because of the appointment. And to that extent, the professional service number has remained level. Should that come down?
I would not recommend it, Mr. Chairman, because that would be a place where we could hire consulting engineers beyond the capabilities of the town engineer. For example, when we did the traffic study work on Dedham Street, we could pay for something like that out of this budget. It's a contingency budget, but it gives you flexibility to respond to needs that are unanticipated.
So that's where we paid for that traffic study?
I believe so,
portion of it,
yes.
Because Park and Rec pays
Yes.
a portion of it also.
Also, things like stormwater, groundwater monitoring, surveying, bridge work, those kinds of things.
So if they're needed, it will come out of this particular
Yes.
number.
Yeah.
Yes, our town engineer, our previous incumbent used to be a registered land surveyor as well. The current town engineer is not. If we needed to do any survey work, like on a property abutting a railroad track, this would be where we pay for it.
Now, I should know this, you made the town engineer appointment, but his compensation is based upon time actually needed?
Yes, actually used. And you can see an interesting trend. In 2013, we used him $5,000 worth in the entire year. To date, we've used him $5,000. What I had anticipated at the time, as that working relationship between the superintendent and the town engineer continues to grow, will be more and more comfortable using the town engineer's services. When the previous incumbent became unable to perform, the superintendent stepped in and did a lot of the subdivision inspection oversight work, and was, reluctance a strong word, but was slow to release it to the town engineer. And now I happen to know from being in the room when the superintendent said, I'm heading north for a few days, you're in charge of the subdivision work, that relationship is expanding, and we expect that we'll see increased expenses here as the utilization increases.
Okay.
It was a great appointment you guys made.
Well, in the big picture, you'd rather have, in no slight to the highway superintendent, you'd rather have the engineer signing off on issues that he should be rather than the highway.
The superintendent stepped up and bridged a need there, but yes, ideally, you really want the town engineer to be involved. He adds a lot of value to the oversight.
Okay. Okay, Carol, where are you? Trying to keep up with you.
Are you at 422?
Yes,
422.
422, yes. Craig, thank you for your narrative. It's always very good to see it.
So the big issue is the catch basin.
Yeah. Why the catch basin's gonna be cleaned out twice a year instead of the one? It's noted, but there's no explanation why.
The more stringent stormwater regulations of the state and federal governments are driving this. That's why we're going from 1 to 2. But the big cost driver in here is we're going to require the materials taken out of the catch basins be disposed of outside of town and not where they are currently being disposed.
Because?
Increasing sensitivity to the volume of material and the activity down in the existing compost area.
Now, when you speak of the federal and state mandates on wastewater, not wastewater, stormwater, thank you. Does that have to do with the Neponset Watershed Act?
They may be related.
Okay. I know a little about that, and I don't want to bore everyone with that, but I know it's not affecting Dover yet.
Right.
But there are trials right outside of the borders here. Okay, and we have costs associated with the potential COA van. Work its way through. So we have equipment maintenance. What else is in there for the van?
Fuel.
But that will net to zero in the bigger picture.
That's
Right.
the operating assumption, which we will confirm by the contract.
We just don't show the expense somewhere because it comes out of the other bucket.
Well, for the purpose of everyone's knowledge, what's the overall cost that's going to be appropriated for the van in this budget?
Let's see, the salary,
Right. Oh, there we are.
10,004 for the salary, plus 1,000, that's 11,400.
and 2340 for the fuel. So that's roughly 15,000?
That's on the salary side?
Total
No.
budget side, totals.
What did I see, the equipment
13,940.
maintenance?
13,940.
Okay.
Did you pick up the equipment maintenance?
Yeah.
Okay. So 13,940,
13,940.
COA van, estimated cost, which would, in our scenario that we are in the middle of now, reimbursed by an agency of the Commonwealth.
Total net will be 0.
Okay. So of the highway budget then, where are we? If we took so 13, or let's call it 14,000 for the purpose of discussion. If we took that out of the total budget, we'd be down to 695,000, which would still be about 30,000 over the previous year.
Well, this decision on the catch basin is a huge expense, moving it out of town.
It is.
Just pick, what's the number? There it is, 86. So there's 20 some odd thousand of the 30,000 increase.
Yes.
Okay.
Would it make sense to actually add separate line items in these categories for the COA? Would that make it easier to keep track of it?
I think so.
I can certainly explore that.
In other words, a special budget item for the fuel, for the maintenance, for the salary.
I would be very comfortable if we saw that separated, because there's a trial basis here on a new product for the Council on Aging. That highway, and obviously, the Selectmen's office will manage. If those numbers are right in front of us, we won't have to dig inside different other numbers to find them. I think that's a good idea.
We'll see what we can do.
Well, so they're going to have to find it, the accounting office is going to have to keep track of it anyway because of the reimbursement to, right?
Yeah, so why dig through the
There's going to be
numbers?
some
then?
kind of reporting to,
Yeah, we should be able to do it. I mean, certainly, we do it now for salaries. It's not in the detail you see, but we track salaries, we track fuel. We have a very sophisticated computer system for tracking fuel usage, so we'd have that. Equipment maintenance is one where we don't do it separately. We could do that.
I think it would be nice to see.
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, Carol, where are you?
Snow and ice?
Now my crystal ball.
Pick a number, any number, on any number.
Well, let the record show, as Mrs. Lisbon knows, the fellows were out Sunday.
Yes, they were.
So it has begun.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Did not know that. It's just,
It was slippery.
that's a shame.
We had to go into Worcester and boy, I tell you, it was bad.
Yeah.
And 290 made the news.
And 290, that's why we went Route 9, and even Route 9, we were just there parts
Yeah.
that were just,
495 had another big one, I heard 30 cars, but it
Yeah.
was superseded by 290, so.
Okay, street lighting. Again, that's just based on the warrant committee recommendations of an increase. Okay, it doesn't look that far off, though. Town garage. Are there any costs for the van in here?
No, that's utilities, town garage.
Okay. Only because it would be housed over there, correct?
Over there, but not in there. There's no space, no room at the inn.
you know, the fuel and the electricity expenses for the town garage are also the same situation where you're talking about, you know, anywhere from 40 to 50% more than previous years.
Yeah. I agree with you on this. I'm not very, and this is consistent.
Yeah.
Using the warrant committee's guidelines, and with all due respect to the warrant committee, perhaps a different approach should have been taken if they had looked at it, the trend over a number of years of volume usage.
Do we have volume usage data on the billing for these various buildings? Is it easy to get?
On fuel oil it is. Do you need
Fuel
water?
oil?
We may have it.
Do you want me to get you some water?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. On fuel oil, certainly.
I think we need to take a look at the fuel oil.
Now, in the case of the town garage and/or highway, do they enter into contracts for fuel for a stated year, or do they pay market?
For heating fuel, we're all under a single contract, and it's a cost-plus contract. It's bid
Right.
every 3 years.
Yeah, well,
For gas and diesel, they're part of the Norfolk County bid, which has fixed prices in it, but it's a funny contract cycle.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sort of, not confused, but I'm hesitant to just accept these budget increases as is. I like the idea of maybe doing a little more analysis and volume usage.
Well, especially in those where there seems to be such a difference.
Okay. Patching, tar beer is it's known, it's pretty consistent. He came out with a new 5-year plan, didn't he?
He's got a current one. I don't know how new it is, but yeah, it's current.
Just completed the play based on the next 5 years, 2014 through 2018.
28, yeah, okay. That's an narrative.
That was from last January.
Where are we, at sanitation. Are you in san-
139, solid
Yes.
waste.
And I may just highlight in professional services, the superintendent has added $9,000 to remove some of the material that's at the compost pile, both street sweepings and catch basin material. Again, consistent with the philosophy from the maintenance budget to start eliminating that material from being stockpiled.
Am I missing a page? Where is that?
Third from the, you're talking about the 233,000, Dave?
If you're looking at, yeah, if you're,
Oh, I see.
it's in the detail page. Professional services breaks
Oh.
down all of the proposed expenditures. Should be the last page in your budget packet for this budget.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And there's a total of 233 and 3 numerical lines above it. Disposal of street sweeping / catch base materials, $9,000. That's to begin reducing the stockpile down there.
Down at the stump dump?
Again, this is new.
Craig used to give us, I think he keeps a spreadsheet, and Nancy does, of the tipping tonnage.
Yes.
Can you get a copy of that?
Sure.
Okay. I did have a question on the town water, which is at Department 450. Yeah, let me find out what my question was. Purchase service, the water charges. Well, the budget last year was $1,600 and change, and it went back to, a few years ago, actual services. Is there an explanation why the budget last year was so small?
The 1633?
Yeah.
Well, the increase in the past 2 historical years is due to leaks. As you recall, our contract requires us to pay the difference between what's billed to our customers and the master meter. And we assumed that fiscal 12 was an anomaly, and then we had some leaks in fiscal 13. So now we're thinking we might want to adjust that so that we can pay for unaccounted for water should we have leaks in the future.
Now, if, again, go back to volume, I imagine it must be within a range, the same volume year to year on water usage, outside of an unanticipated leak.
Our usages are predictable.
Right.
It's the unaccounted for water which is not, and has historically been low until fiscal 12.
We did a reserve fund transfer, didn't we?
I think we did, yeah, for the repairs.
On
Yep.
Springdale?
Yeah, curiously, up until fiscal 12, in the 15 years I've been here, we never had a water leak of any significance. And then we had several of them in fiscal 12, and then another one in fiscal 13.
So you're building in insurance here in case there is a leak.
Based on the history.
One would argue that's a reserve fund issue. And the small dollars, granted.
I'd like to put this one in the same category as we did of seeing what the numbers look like. Well, so for the next meeting, if we could have that spreadsheet and fill in these numbers.
Okay. Where am I? Council Aging, I think, is my next one, right?
If we do a revolving fund for the COA, as we discussed previous meetings, will that impact the way we're accounting for some of these programs?
It should.
It may, it may. I'd have to look at, that spreadsheet showing how they're funding different things.
I mean, I can't, you never know what the vote's gonna be, but I can't imagine that article would not be approved at town meeting.
Oh, no. But what they typically do is they charge a very, very modest fee for services provided by these people. So say somebody works for $75 an hour, and they get 3 people at $5 they charge, so it's $15 into revolving, it's still net 60 that has to be funded.
Yes, their fees are very low. It's $3, $5. There's one that was an exception that was a little bit, a couple of dollars higher.
So there's some appropriation impact even if there's a revolving fund because of that subsidy.
Or maybe wait a year, then the next year, take a look at how it
That's
impacts.
good.
Right.
I know the council agent is actually supporting and looking forward to having a revolving fund versus using their gift fund, like a revolving fund.
Right. And you can see from the memo here that there have been programs added in FY15 as the selectmen have requested. So in addition to the ongoing, there's actually
What?
the Zumba Gold will be shared with Park and Rec, the cost of Zumba Gold. And the COA wants to start a core fitness class and also an art class. Apparently all of the attendees at the art class over in Holliston under a grant which is ending are all from Dover and Sherburne. There are no Holliston residents taking that art class.
How do they price programs for non-residents of Dover?
Are there non-residents who take
Well,
the
so
classes?
I'll
I
take the Art for Elders
Mhm.
class, for instance. So $5,000 grant has been expended, and Holliston will discontinue in June, as Dover and Sherburne seniors are the only attendees.
Right.
So if we pick up the cost of the program, and we charge a token, I can understand charging a token to Dover residents.
Yeah, but there's no one else attending it. Oh, you mean the
Sherburne.
Sherburne residents?
Right.
Sherburne, okay. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
And is it a reciprocal type thing, because Sherburne has things that Dover, you know,
I believe that they do have programs that Dover residents take advantage of, yes. They have more
yeah,
approved
I'd like to
grants.
understand that whole thing a little bit more. just
Sure,
because-
we can ask about that.
You want to ask Council Agent?
I'm done with Council on Aging.
What's the next one? Veteran expenses, which is Veterans Affairs Officer, the annual stipend. I thought it was 2,000 for the annual stipend, no?
1,000 for the stipend and 1,000 for expenses.
Oh, okay, thank you. I know there was an issue on representation of veterans through the Veteran Affairs Office. Have we done anything with that?
It's on the list, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Has not been forgotten.
There's some confusion whether our Veteran Affairs Officer is appropriately used in the town of Dover. Okay.
Appropriately used or appropriately employed,
Yeah, employed.
right?
Right,
They're barely used.
right.
Okay. Minuteman vocational, you have any idea of the number of students? No? Probably not.
We don't have an assessment yet?
So the 40,509, is that 2 students? Oh, I'm sorry, that's the actual one.
Yeah, that's the assessment
So, right.
spent so far.
So, Norfolk Aggie was this, but you have, do we know there's 3 students in Norfolk Aggie? Is that what that is?
That's what we're forecasting, we don't know.
Okay. Just 3. Social admission expense. And as we go through, whether it's maturing interest or maturing debt, those are our amortization schedules. Bank charges, I saw. Where are you, Carol, toward the end?
Yep,
Expenses.
Norfolk County.
Yeah, the Norfolk County retirement, the estimate, which isn't here yet, obviously. I forget the level of detail we got as far as how it's calculated, and whether they're meeting minutes, whereby the members vote for them, or whatever the case may be. Is that a set and dry?
We're part of the county system.
Right.
So there's a governance structure and advisory board that votes on the funding schedule. And then assessments are apportioned based on that funding schedule and our share of payroll compared to the whole county share from year to year. At the last meeting, they did vote to increase the total county assessment by 10% to reflect in large part the poor investment results the last few years, as well as the actuarial funding analysis. But that 10% may be less for us or more for us depending upon what our ratio is of payroll to the total county payroll. So we don't know what that's going to be yet.
Okay, what's the timing of that?
Typically January, early February.
I have a copy of an article that I stuck in my budget folder from Boston Globe South back in November about the huge increase that there's Plymouth County.
I actually read that article.
Yeah.
That's why I was more interested
Yeah.
this year in the past.
Well, we're in better shape than they are because we've been more conservative over time.
Okay, the insurances. Specifically the first one, workers' comp. You have a number in there. Is that just an estimate or?
That is, it's based on the town's second year of a rate lock agreement with the town's insurance carrier. 2.5% increase in FY15, providing that we don't have fluctuations in our loss experience. Our representative has suggested that we put in, she's projected a 10% increase to allow for those fluctuations, so 12.5% increase
Am
altogether.
I missing something?
Doesn't seem-
Missing.
I have 3.38%.
Yeah, I know too. I was about to ask
Done.
you 12.
Okay, so we took that over,
Oh, so you took it off
yeah,
of the...
over the FY14 actual gross premiums, not off of what we had budgeted.
Oh, I see, okay, got
Yeah.
it, okay.
And actually, we had cut that budget, it's 10,000 in FY11.
Right,
FY12, we had a $3,000 shortfall. FY13, we cut it 5,000. In FY14, we cut it 6,000.
right, there you go.
You know, it's really, again, hard to predict.
Yep.
Because we won't know until the end of the fiscal year what participation credits we'll get. Meyer Rewards, how much we got double last year and the year before that we gotten in the prior several years to those, to last year and the year before. So it's really, and that can fluctuate by tens of thousands of dollars, so it's never really certain.
We were essentially a mutual insurance company, so there's no profits. So if the group, there's like 200 towns in the group, if we have a good year, there are surpluses, and they get returned in subsequent years.
Right.
Bad years, they dry up. So we always budget on gross premiums, because insurance is insurance, and you gotta pay for it.
Right.
And do they do an annual audit of compensation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of employees are pretty stagnant.
It's certainly fixed on our side. On the school side, I'm not particularly familiar, but there aren't usually significant adjustments to audit.
You know, all it can take, though, is one lengthy claim to really change that number fairly dramatically.
Yeah. Okay, on to group health. So the preliminary estimate is 10% increase.
Yes.
It's interesting, we had Carol Cormier in to talk to us as we were preparing for the school union discussions, and she suggested that we use 7%.
She suggested to us 10%. And what she did say to us is the group, we have this debate going on. Of course, I'm a conservative guy, so when I go to the West Suburban Health Group, I'm looking at multi-year projections and not just, you know, how much relief can we provide to 1 year. But in her recommendation to us, she said, you know, the group has used its surplus down to almost nothing to reduce its rate increases in the last couple of years. So 10% is a good conservative number for now. And what I think we did last year or 2 years ago is in February, we looked at it again, because hopefully we set rates in February, and if we make a significant adjustment based on the actual rates, we can do so at that time. But it concerns me that the group has in fact sucked up its surplus. We used to have a really healthy surplus, but financial demands being what they are in communities, it's hard to look out multiple years when you're worried about this one, so.
Well, then you've got the added risk of really not having a history yet of the cost structure relative to the Affordable Care Act, which may or may not create surpluses, or, I mean, who knows?
Correct. Exactly, who knows? Yeah.
I look forward to our next meeting with more information and other explanations as we develop the numbers in a more solid base.
Yeah, I'd love to see the numbers added on the spreadsheet, so
Well,
that really...
Yes.
Very, David, thank you for this. I know it's a lot of work.
You're welcome, Mr. Chairman. I thank the department heads for all of their able assistance in helping us put this all together on a timely basis.
I'll move to another agenda item then, which is the revised, review the revised fiscal 2015 highway capital budget request.
Right, so what happened was, on Monday, the capital budget committee met, and Craig and Dave came in to review the highway department budget. And, no, it's not here, okay. So Craig explained that the slide and sander, which is the new stainless steel sander that goes into the back of the bed of the truck, that he has 5 of them. And the request for fiscal year 15 was to replace the 3rd out of the 5. Which of course then brought up the question of when are number 4 and 5 going to be replaced, because they weren't on here.
Okay.
So what you'll see in the revision is that he has added the replacement of a 4th one. In fiscal year... in fiscal year 16, and the 5th one in fiscal year 17. Okay, and then the question came up that he has 2 one-ton trucks with plow. One he's requesting for fiscal year 2015 at $56,000. So he was asked to revisit the replacement of the 2nd one in fiscal year 16 because the price was less, right? So he increased that up to 16.
Okay. Are we going to, or are you guys actually, not we, are you going to include that in this master list of that, you know, it's sort of, I've been using this as,
That's the selectmen's budget.
right, but
Not the
right,
highway.
I just wanted to add these numbers.
Typically, we keep them separate.
Okay, no, I was just saying.
Right. So we need to vote on this so we can get this to the capital
Oh,
budget.
okay.
So
Thank you.
I move we approve the revised capital budget request from the highway department.
So let me just take a step back. They made the full presentation of the capital, which you are a member of, and you are content with these numbers and the explanations. I will second your motion. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
I brought up the spreadsheet just for ease of reading, so we
Yeah.
have
Yep.
all the information in front of us on one or two
Well, to
pages.
that point, have we, just get that one out, you're a selectman, right?
Yes.
So we had discussed, and I don't know if we had voted on it and actually sent it on to the capital budget. We didn't talk about this budget on Monday. when we voted last week to, last meeting to, and the warrant committee confirmed tonight to move to do the fire station doors this year, so we can remove that from the list. And then we had, based upon Carl's work with the consultant, agreed to move the re-roofing of the roof out to fiscal year 17. Did we vote on that and actually send a new?
No, because we're waiting for the refresh numbers on the dispatch reconfiguration.
They were sent informationally to the Capital
okay,
Budget
thank
you. They were
Committee.
sent informationally?
Yes, only.
Okay.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, hopefully you'll be voting on that at your next meeting.
Thank you.
Has Capital started formulating a grand schedule?
We have the numbers now, they run, assuming the 400,000 for the police,
Right.
it was in the 800, 850 range. So 450 without the big ticket item, which
Which
seems
is
to
pretty
be
consistent.
about right. Especially now, what we have to keep in mind is that because of the on-site insight report
Right.
that the Dover School Committee had contracted with, we now have, and the fact that the building's now 11 years old, so everything's out of warranty. So the capital expenditures for the maintenance of the Chickering School have increased significantly. And they're gonna be running $150,000 a year, which is a
And
big increase.
are they gonna run it through Capital, or are they gonna all
It's
run
run
it
through
through?
Capital.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the region's going through the same thing, but it's
Right.
running through the assessment.
Assessment.
Yeah,
Maybe through the assessment, right?
maybe through the
Maybe,
assessment.
yeah. Okay, thank you. Let me go forward to the next agenda item, which is execute the local 1116 collective bargaining agreement, which is our union employees in highway, parking rec, and, am I missing?
Building maintenance.
Building maintenance, thank you. I should read this front piece of paper, which says that. Okay, I know we sat over the summer months. Dave, thank you very much for that.
Mr. Chairman?
Greer, you were in these particular negotiations also, thank you.
I was.
Town council at the time, is a fantastic guy. Okay, now, that being said, short of executing it, what do you want me to do as far as,
Well, the board had already authorized the memorandum of agreement,
Right.
which set the terms and conditions, so this is just formalizing the actual contract document, so we need a vote to execute.
okay.
It's already been executed by the union.
Before I do that, I would like to thank the union representatives and the union employees for agreeing to this. And, okay.
So just, this is, let's do the contract for a second, while I'm all here. Just given something I'm dealing with on Saturdays this fall. Step 10. So you're here 9 years, and you're at step 9. And your 10th year, you go to step 10. What happens on the 11th year?
You stay at step 10. In our contracts, you
And
stay at
these,
step 10.
so you just stay at step 10.
You
stay
get the
at-
general
Get a
increases.
general increase by the rate.
Yeah.
Between step 9 and step 10, however, I don't, is,
It's 2.75% increase from step 9 to step 10.
and then step 10 in the following years are just your COLA increases?
Yes.
Okay.
What, during our analysis, during the negotiations, we looked into, beside the general COLA increase, with the knowledge of what employee was still in the step system, so we that into effect when we were discussing things internally, the overall exposure to the new contract.
You say only one employee is still?
I think it was 4, if I remember correctly.
Through the 3 departments, it might have been 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are not at step 10.
We have a
Still in the
seasoned,
program.
stable workforce.
Right.
Right. But it's something that I didn't take lightly because I first stepped into this role and I started looking at these step schedules. Beside, generally giving someone 2 or 3%, whatever it is.
Well, you have the built-in increase plus the COLA,
Right,
so
right.
that, which is why you're seeing 4 or 5, whatever.
Okay. Okay. You comfortable with the
I
contract?
am. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
With that motion, with that, I will make a motion to execute the local 1116 collective bargaining agreement between the town of Dover and the Massachusetts Laborers District Council on behalf of Highway Park and Rec and the Building Maintenance Departments for the town of Dover. And this runs contract July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2016.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay, 3 copies. You would both please sign. Thank you.
Robin not here. We need 2 signatures to effectuate this, or?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item is another positive step in executing Police Chief McGowan's contract renewal. I think Chief McGowan's done a fabulous job over his first 2.5 years, and it's been a very quick 2.5. So his contract expires at the end of this fiscal year, or thereabouts.
Yes.
So, over the last month or 2, myself and Mr. Ramsey have negotiated a new contract with the chief, and we're very, very happy. We accepted it, and it was a very easy negotiation. Chief is dedicated to the town, and we appreciate that very much. I'm very familiar with the contract, Carol.
Oh, I'm sure you are. Once again, thank you for doing this on behalf of the town. Chief has been a wonderful addition to Dover.
Yes. I'll make the motion to execute the employment contract between the town of Dover and Peter A. McGowan as the chief of police.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 3 copies, both of you, please.
So just 2 here, 1 for him, 1 for us. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, now on to some, oh, what? I missed one. Oh, there's 3. Oh, there was 3?
There are 3 copies, 1 for the town accountant also. Thank you.
Well, I was about to say, now on to some very serious matters, about early closings on Christmas and New Year's Eve. And Greer, would you just like to give us a quick
Sure.
synopsis on that one?
In the past, we've asked the board if they would consider closing the townhouse early on both Christmas and New Year's Eves in the past. The board has agreed to close at noontime on Christmas Eve, which is on a Wednesday, I believe. No, a Tuesday
gonna
this
ask
year.
that.
Tuesday this year.
Tuesday.
Yeah, and on New Year's Eve at 3 p.m.
I remember I asked this question last year, why it wasn't noontime on New Year's Eve also.
It's been 3 p.m. for quite a number of years now, and I think that,
For as long as I can remember.
yes, has worked
Do you remember that?
very well. for those who, yeah, for those who are here morning, noon, and late afternoon into the early evening. We appreciate getting out at 3.
I mean, I suppose if there's an
Certainly.
inventory problem, and if you know, if the champagne's gone by 1, then we
As long as Higgins stays over. Okay, if tradition calls for the 3, I don't want to buck tradition. So I'll make the motion that we close early on Christmas Eve, which is Tuesday, the 24th at noon time, and New Year's Eve, which is Tuesday, the 31st at 3 p.m.
second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Get the word out to the employees.
Okay, next on the agenda, where is it? In other business, special license, we only have 2. It's funny how these, at the beginning of September, they pop up and then they dwindle down. And I'll read both of them, and we'll vote on both of them after the fact. The first one is December 19th at the Boston College Connors Center. I see the chief has signed off on that one, thank you. The second is December 21st, again at the Boston College Connors Center, and the chief has authorized that one also. So I'll make the motion to accept both special licenses as read.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Maybe get more in line with our time. Only 40 minutes behind. Reserve fund transfer for the veterans. Dave, are you going to speak to this, or?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. As you know, as a result of the IRS audit that was done, a number of people who had been considered consultants and paid through the general warrants were determined now that they need to be paid as employees for tax purposes. So this coming in mid-year, after the budgets had already been voted, we don't have any money in the salary line for the veterans agent. So we're requesting the $1,000 that's in the expense side to be transferred from the reserve fund into the salary side to pay him the stipend through the payroll.
Now, it says biannual stipend, and is that a correct description?
Yes, the
The total
$1,000
budget
in
is-
total for the year.
Right.
So we're asking for it now. We're paying $500 now, $500 in June
Okay.
through the payroll.
Oh, thank you.
So we've done a few like this, and we've taken care of the uniform allowances the same way. Is this the end of it now? Have we
I think it
identified
I
is.
think it is.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. He needs to be paid shortly, so, you know,
Yeah, no, I just
realized
wanna
we
make sure
needed to
reserve
get
fund
it-
transfer,
yes.
and we're gonna be using it for that we make sure these types of things, which also have to be done. that they're-
I think this is the last of them.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that we approve the reserve fund transfer for $1,000 for the veterans agent biannual stipend.
Second?
It's actually accounting class, allocation and accounting-wise difference. That's all it is.
That's what it is. Net zero.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. John Cohen asked that he get a copy of this.
okay, we'll make sure we get him one.
Okay, next on our agenda is the meeting minutes of November 21st, 2013. This particular meeting was tax classification hearing, presentation by the assessors. The fire chief reviews and the board of fire engineers came in and described the issue, and we came up with a solution to the fire doors over there. It's very good. Good. I know I made some changes. Good. Did you make any changes?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I didn't think so. Other than that, good, okay. I'll make the motion to accept the meeting minutes of November 21st, 2013.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Excellent. And as we close in on our adjournment, the Citizens' Common is next on our agenda items. And Carol, do you have anything to say?
I do not.
I am speechless also in this particular matter. So I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Good night now.
Good night.